So, Upekkha, equanimity. I'll probably use those words interchangeably. So this is the fourth of the four Brahma Viharas, all of which are unlimited in their scope, as represented in the last stage of each. All of the Brahma Viharas offer ways to refine our hearts and minds and approach the universal understanding, universal sensibility. The Brahma Viharas are by definition of universal scope, in the sense that with metta, for example, we cultivate metta so that we can approach all beings equally. The difference between our friendly regard, our kindness towards each type of relationship becomes less and less the more we cultivate metta. Discrimination and preference subside. So Upekkha is the culmination or the fruition of all of the Brahma Viharas, and the other three that we've been practicing are implicit in equanimity. Equanimity raises everything to another level in a way. It sees the whole person, takes in a bigger picture. And Upekkha, like the other Brahma Viharas, is fully engaged. It's fully connected in the midst of all of life, ready to respond equally and appropriately, no matter what the situation. With Upekkha, we are less caught up in our own preoccupation with pleasure or pleasant experiences. We're less fearful of pain and unpleasant experiences. Our mind is free of reactivity, and we're better able to hold extremes. With equanimity, we can be fully in the whole tumultuous river of life and flow with it. So I'm told, or I read from scholars who know about such things, that the word Upekkha, which is Pali, by the way, means discerning rightly or viewing justly. It's a little bit different because at first glance, that doesn't sound like an emotional quality like loving kindness or sympathetic joy or compassion. So right away, we get a hint that this is of another kind of quality. And yet, Upekkha is profoundly positive. It's extremely positive. And as I mentioned before, it's kind of the ultimate non-reactivity. It is a heart response, equanimity. It's a heart response. We'll say it. It's the total response when we take in, or when we confront or see or are struck by the conditioned nature of things, which is reality. Upekkha is the capacity to be present for ourselves and others in the midst of everything. Everything that gives rise to pleasure, pain, suffering, and death, all of those difficult things, as well as those things that give us joy, bliss, love, and birth. Upekkha is steadiness while being connected to all of this. It arises when we accept the way things are. That's a tricky kind of sentence to say because it could be interpreted as a passive sort of thing. Upekkha is in the sense that it's fully engaged, is not passive. And in the intensity of the seeing that we're involved in with equanimity, it's not passive. It develops on the basis of some insight into reality, plus and contact with limitlessness. So you can see how it kind of, Upekkha sort of needs the base that we've built up as we cultivate metta, karuna, and mudita. All of which give us the strength of heart to deal with beings, to deal with the vicissitudes of life. But equanimity is bringing in this quality of seeing and limitlessness in a more conscious way. And it tends to have a more objective feel to it, as opposed to subjective. With the other Brahma Viharas, we sort of make contact by tuning in to specifics, to those things we really feel quite strongly. Emotions are very alive in the other practices. And it's not that equanimity is unemotional. It's just that introducing the facing reality and all of its big impact makes the particulars less, or the subjectivity, it makes it well, more transparent, I guess you could say. So what we're engaging in with equanimity, with cultivating upekkha, is a large view that is less and less self-referential. I mean, through all of the practices, we're learning how to be less self-referential. And this is kind of the culmination territory. In another way, we could say that upekkha is the capacity to stay steady, and poised is a word that comes up a lot with equanimity, poised between strong forces in the mind, those being classically attraction and aversion. So upekkha is a kind of freedom. It's freedom from being pulled this way and that way between our attraction and aversion, our constant ruminating, our constant reaction. It's freedom from emotional intensity. It's freedom from doubt, freedom from needing to be in control. This is a big one. Remember in the morning puja, which we did the other day, one of the phrases is, "We cannot control it all." And our efforts to control or manage life are all about protecting our sense of self. Yeah. Or even somebody else's self. We put a lot of effort into that as well when we're worried about and concern ourselves with other people's troubles. And when we're not actually in the perfection of compassion, a lot of times we're bringing our anxiety to make someone else's self better for them and for me. But it's still all about selfing. Oh, remember when we notice this kind of failing in ourselves? Compassion, compassion, metta, metta, metta. It's not a fault that we are so imperfect. It is it's a recognition to be kind. So we can aspire to equanimity where these trouble and these intense efforts to make things right can relax a little bit without pulling out of the world entirely, right? I mean, I think a lot of us have probably thought about, well, I'm gonna go to the mountains and that's it. The cave is for me, or the monastery, or the nunnery. And yet, here we all are. Some of us are going to work and doing this retreat. So it's we don't want to make a dichotomy of how to live. We do want to be engaged, and Upekkha is the pathway to make this possible without being swamped, and in such a way that we really can be of some use and help in the world. So let's pause now for a couple of minutes and do a little exercise. You can close your eyes or not. You can stare into space, whatever. First step, with only 3 choices, true Buddhist fashion, how are you now? Generally, is your sense of experience generally pleasant, generally unpleasant, or you're sort of indifferent? Okay. We should, I mean, part of our practice is getting very familiar with these, so chances are you can flash onto that quite quickly. In the past 2 hours, or maybe the past hour, did you experience a different state? Pleasant, unpleasant, indifferent? And if so, what was it? Now bring someone to mind, anyone you know, someone you know of any stripe or closeness. Are you aware of this person having experience of all 3 states at some point in your acquaintance with them? We hardly need to reflect, right? This is kind of a, well, yeah, kind of situation. But in the meditation, this very, very simple awareness becomes a key to something much larger. And we'll be exploring that more later. A bit of lag, okay, and some crackling. Let's try this. I hope that's a bit better for the sound quality.
Yes, that is.
So, thank you. The near and far enemies. Might take a little bit to suss this out. You can imagine while I'm speaking, you can imagine for yourself, what do you think the opposite of equanimity is? The answer may surprise you. You might think it's turbulence, but actually not. The far enemy of equanimity is cold indifference or dismissiveness. So cold indifference is willed. It's active in a way. It's disengagement that has a profound, unhelpful effect. It might be a state where someone feels they're separate from it all. Oh, I'm above it all. Oh, that doesn't bother me. I'm unaffected, and therefore I must be equanimous. Actually, there can be quite a lot of blocking and alienation involved in that kind of indifference. It's quite painful when you explore it a bit. The near enemy of Upekkha is usually referred to as lukewarm indifference. So it's the same characteristic, but not quite as active, not quite as intense. You could also say neutrality, and we're going to explore neutrality later. Apathy. Oh, apathy's not enjoyable. Complacency. Meh. Yeah. All of these imply a kind of fuzziness or lack of engagement. It's just a question of intensity. So the challenge is to stay engaged, to notice our tendency to veer away, to sort of glance off the reality of any given moment, to avoid. So the challenge is to strengthen our capacity to stay with all of life's moments, including boredom. That's a moment. And actually, if you, this is one of the opportunities in the Brahma Viharas. We have the third, usually it's the third stage, where we bring to mind someone about whom we don't feel much one way or another. We kind of, meh. It's a very, and if we notice what goes on for us, I mean, a lot of people say, well, it's just hard to stay with that person because I don't know them. Well, what's actually happening? What's actually happening is it's hard to stay with them because we don't have enough to attach to. Most of the time in our interactions, we're attaching to something. Attraction and aversion are kind of the same dynamic in this territory of the way the mind works. So they're both hooks. It's just a question of which way the hook is turned in a way. Is it swiping away or swiping towards. It's the same thing. Um, so yeah, this state of boredom, whether we're sitting on our couch and we've just finished our book or just got off the phone with somebody, what's next? The open space. Well, we try to fill it, don't we? It's very, very challenging to stay in the richness of every moment because we're sort of addicted to, especially in modern society, modern culture, we're addicted to big stimulation. And, the expression of drama queen, well, some of us are sort of neurologically more volatile. We kind of have big highs and big lows and big energies, right? And some people less so. They're what is this called? The ups and downs. There's a beautiful word for this, but I can't think of it. Are
Vicissitudes?
Yeah, amplitudes. Vicissitudes and amplitudes. Yeah. So the amplitude for some of us is like really big. And some people are more, their range is just more modest. But the dynamic is happening for all of us. So sitting with the so-called neutral person is a really important thing to do because that's where we learn to see this subtle tendency to want to make something happen. Well, if I want to make something happen or not happen, it's all about me and my experience. This is important territory for the Brahma Viharas. Another near-ish enemy for Upekkha is fear. It triggers the need to protect. Again, it's self-oriented. It's a kind of resistance, and it does create avoidance. So anything that creates avoidance is in the enemy spectrum. I also have run across another teacher who speaks about attachment as a near enemy or as in the enemy camp for Upekkha. And I've just spoken about that a little bit. It inclines us to make something happen, not to just be with things as they are. It inclines us to try to control the situation. And attachment inclines us to take things personally rather than seeing every situation as the larger processes of conditions coming together and shifting around. So, staying connected, that's, I use that term a lot when I'm leading metta, and I know it's like, what, huh? Stay connected. But what it means is be alert to the tendency to veer off, to slide away from the moment. Okay, I'm going to share am I going to? Yes, I am going to show a picture here. Okie dokie. This is not easy to read. It is obviously hand-drawn. Somebody did this as a mentor project many years ago at Aryaloka. We've been using this chart for over 20 years. At some point, I'll redo it. So here we have metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha. The near enemy is in a circle. The far enemy is in a box. So here we have Upekkha. The near enemy is apathy or neutrality. The far enemy is cold indifference. Maybe I can make this bigger. The writing underneath that you can't read, don't worry about it. It's just a definition of each. So what about, this is fairly clear, right? And the fact that they're all connected is fairly clear. They all build on one another. So what about these lines? So if we're troubled by apathy or neutrality, or we just can't find anything to relate to about this person or this situation, bring in metta. These are the lines of the antidote. If we are in anxiety and pity, and we just can't get close to true compassion because we're getting a little swamped by it, bring in mudita. Remember that it's not all terrible all the time. If in metta, it's just a little bit cloying and a little bit sweet and gooey and doesn't have any sincerity in it, bring in some real life, bring in compassion, bring in some reality, some grit of suffering, and wake ourselves up out of something superficial and just, oh, how nice. No, not always all so nice. Really tough, really needs love. And if we're in mudita, or we're not in mudita, but we're in this kind of vicarious enjoyment, and we're just kind of letting ourselves get giddy and excited, sort of riding on the coattails of somebody else's good phase in life, and we're just, kind of trying to make everything a party out of somebody else's life. Well, bring in some equanimity. Level it out a little bit, calm it down, recognize that yes, as much as there's joy, there's everything else too. So I hope that's helpful. I know this is a lot, but people often say that Upekkha gets short shrift. And I understand why people say that, because it's almost a whole universe in itself that does build on the other Brahma Viharas, but it's a lot. It's a big territory and big practice. But I don't want to give it short shrift today, so I'm going to carry on. Upekkha is said to be metta as it meets the reality of conditioned existence. Metta with wisdom. There will be suffering and joy and everything in between. It's just the way it is. Upekkha is acceptance of this. Our whole practice, in a way, our whole Dharma practice is to understand and go deeper and deeper and deeper into realizing how conditioned existence works. How is it that things are codependent? How does this situation arise? How does my action play into that situation? How is it that I'm not as independent as I feel? What does that even mean? That's our whole Dharma life, right? And with Upekkha, we're approaching that big wisdom with this understanding of suffering and joy, the spectrum of experience. We reflect that they don't arise randomly, but are results of infinitely complex conditions and choices. Would be a good time for an example. Well, I don't know. The contentment that I experience in my life now, it comes after many, many choices of saying no to certain things that would have kept me more busy, more engaged, more fully employed, would have me with a higher income. So, they're choices. I am where I am because of all of that, and because of opportunities that I've had in my life, because I'm part of a sangha. Nothing arises randomly. And yet, even though it's a lot of my choices, I also can't control it. I talked about that a little bit earlier. So equanimity is about our longing for happiness, our longing for fulfillment for ourselves and others, balancing that with the truth of things. There are some allies, I call them, that can help as we cultivate equanimity. These are related qualities. Shraddha, confidence or faith. It's very helpful because with equanimity, a lot of times we're kind of looking into something unknown as we're gradually breaking up the habit of always attaching on to something, making something happen. As that subsides, we're kind of not really sure what might be there. So Shraddha is quite important. Confidence in our own metta. It's very, very important. Also patience, kshanti or forbearance. It's very, very helpful with upekkha. Here comes again. Whoa! Here it comes again. Kshanti, forbearance. And with forbearance, kshanti, we learn not to define ourselves by any particular phase along that roller coaster, right? I mean, I've been at some of the lower points in my roller coaster where I think, okay, this is it. This is my life. All right. Nope. Go. Nope. There's another rise. It's never just one way. So that's patience. Metta, of course. Mindfulness, of course. This skill in being aware and attentive, especially informed by body awareness. All the time, all the time. What's happening? What's happening? And is the gut clenching? Am I leaning forward slightly? Are my cells kind of pushing forward because I want something? Mindfulness. Reflection on the nature of existence. Big Buddhist terms. The three lakshanas, they've been mentioned already during the retreat. Dukkha, conditioned existence, has the nature of suffering in it, the nature of unsatisfactoriness. That's dukkha. It will be there. Impermanence. Shravaniya talked with us yesterday about contemplating death. Yep. It's very, very important. And we have so many ways to contemplate impermanence. The transiency of all things. What is compounded will dissolve, transform. And the third characteristic of conditioned existence is, the term that I like to use is insubstantiality. It just doesn't hold together. Just doesn't. It's composite. And the image that I like to use that helps me remember this is that within an atom, there's more space than there is matter. So if matter is my selfing, the matter is, okay, solid, me, check, got it. Well, there's a little of that, but the opportunity, the openness, the spaciousness, the possibility is actually much greater. So insubstantiality. And of course, there are a million ways to contemplate these. And finally, a related quality that helps the practice of Upekkha is stillness and stability, or a good, strong shamatha practice. Jhanas, even, the higher states of awareness that can arise when we are deeply, deeply still and quiet. They can give us a taste of what equanimity feels like in the body and the mind, the quietude, the simplicity and directness when we stop interfering with stuff and stop taking everything personally and stop worrying about if it's going to get better or worse. Meditative states can really help us taste that. Although, and here's a whole topic, a whole retreat in and of itself, but Upekkha is not exactly the same as jhanas. Equanimity is a characteristic of some of those meditative absorptions. Upekkha, as a Brahma Vihara, has this crucial component of wisdom, contemplation of reality combined and infused in it, that even reflection upon it. If you're not completely overwhelmed and ready to just go do something else, Upekkha's big. It's big. How do we do this as a practice, as a Brahma Vihara? And we will do it in a little while, I assure you. The stages, like all of the Brahma Viharas, have a rhyme and a reason. We begin as we are accustomed with and I think these notes are in the resource page. You can write them if you want, but you can find them elsewhere. So the first stage is sitting, tuning into ourselves with metta. In the second stage, this one's a little different. We bring to mind someone about whom we feel not much. We're kind of neutral in relation to this person. And we reflect, and it doesn't need to be complicated because we don't know them very well. We simply bring them to mind, say their name if we know it. This person, like me, experiences highs and lows, experiences joy and sorrow, experiences pain and pleasure and boredom. I know that for sure. So with that reflection and with metta, we sit with the reality of life for that person, just as for ourselves. My own experience with this, I was working with metta for years on end. It was my daily practice for about 3 years. And I found that this stage, this neutral stage, to be really intriguing. And I just want to encourage you to approach it as though it might have more to teach you than you thought. Here it is. It's the beginning of the Upekkha practice. Then we bring to mind, third stage of this practice will bring to mind a good friend. The same reflection with metta, realizing their ups and downs, which, since they're our friend, we might know quite well. Fourth stage, the same as we're familiar with metta. We recognize that this person who drives us crazy or with whom I create difficulty has ups and downs, has struggles, has challenges, is happy one day and unhappy the next. This can be a big breakthrough. Fifth stage, all together. Now, this is really important, and I'll spend a little bit of time on this. For all of the Brahma Viharas, the beginning of this stage, I'll say it's the fifth stage, even though in 2 of them it's the sixth stage. We bring to mind everyone together all at once, right? The good friend, the neutral person, the one we have difficulty with, and ourself. This moment is really key. It is the moment where we experiment or test or see, noticing whether we're able to hold metta equally, no matter what the relationship. If in my imagination, and some of us visualize, I know, if we're all sitting around a table together, that's how I usually do it. Do I tend to keep looking at my friend? Or I'm a very curious person, so I might be more continually drawn to the person I don't know well, because I'm just kind of like that. So do I continually, even at this stage, with metta already flowing, do I continue to try to select and show preference? The practice is to show metta, to share metta, to exist in metta equally. Now, that may mean that if we're really honest, that it has to be a bit lukewarm. We can't be overly uh, animated about it as we might be with our friend in the presence of the person who we find irritating. So this is a really important phase. Equality. Let me just see what else I wanted to say about that. Removing partiality. This is where we are highlighting the truth that we are all simply human beings. All other details are secondary. The shared reality of being human together is much, much, much greater than our differences. This is true genetically, even genetically. That might be an image that helps some people. Our attachments change, our preferences change. What is steady throughout is the truth of everyone living through the challenges of conditioned existence. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Just want to underscore that the importance of that, sitting equally. And as in all of the Brahma Viharas, having done that, sitting equally with all of these people we invited in, we expand as far as we can while staying engaged, while staying connected. During some meditations, that may be the whole cosmos. Other times, our sense of expansiveness only gets just past the front door, figuratively speaking. So I'm a proponent of keeping it real. Stretching, but not allowing ourselves to become abstract. Especially with Upekkha. It's delicate. It's delicate. Because we can go to some place that is actually a bit disconnected quite easily. Upekkha Bhavana. I'll just pretty much go straight through it. And I'll say a little bit at the beginning of each stage. Sitting, settling, having no particular agenda except to kindly notice here I am. Here's this body, seated, supported, grounded. Noticing what is in the belly, often a guide to the emotional undercurrent that may be present. Kindly noticing how am I now? This is metta towards myself. Kindly noticing the activity in the mind, this mind that seems to be always active, always here somehow. What's going on? What's the energy? Jumpy, still, foggy, calm, bright. Kindly noticing. Being with whatever seems to be here right now. No need to change, cultivate, or do anything other than kindly be with what is present now. Bringing to mind now someone we hardly know. It may be someone on the screen in front of us if you need a little prompt. Just bring that person to mind. Say their name if you know it. And reflect that that person, even though we know nothing about them, experiences all the highs and lows, joys and sorrows, aspirations and challenges, just as we ourselves do. And as we sit with whatever arises for ourselves, so with metta, we are willing and open to sitting with this person in all the fullness of their life experience. It is the very lack of detail here. We have no stories for this person. It's this non-attachment, nothing personal, which allows us to take a clear, steady, and even heart path of kindness, no matter what is happening in this person's life. On some level, we know it, and we can, with metta, ride through all. And we're willing to do that with this person right now. Bringing to mind now a good friend, and with an open heart, we acknowledge the full range of human experience that this person goes through. And with metta, we are with them, steady, stable, offering ease, tending toward calm, confidence, present, even through all the ups and downs. We hold for our good friend a certain willingness to face everything, knowing the truth. This is how it is. Yes, there are storms. Yes, there are good days. This is how it is. Bringing to mind now someone with whom we've had some difficulty. Pausing to notice as this person comes into our mind. Are there tiny shifts in our body? Is there a tiny shift in our energy in relation to this person? Just noticing. Being with kindly acknowledging and reflecting. This person, too, has good days and bad days, struggles, wishes, failures, accomplishments, things they want, things they don't want, dukkha, loss. Can my heart respond to this all too human experience, even with this person? The practice is to be with them, to notice and feel in our own heart what it is to be alive, and know that they are in it too. May we both ride through it steadily with some ease, some confidence, this being alive is not a personal matter. Bringing together ourself, the person that once upon a time we felt neutral towards, our good friend, and the person who once upon a time we had difficulty with. Practicing an equal, open-hearted gaze of kindness and care, friendliness, all around, all four of us, the same, doing our best to cope in this life. If you feel up to it, if your heart feels strong, allow other beings, other people to pop into your mind and partake of this calming, equal equanimity through conditioned living. Just randomly allow people to pop in. Only as many as you feel connected to.